Africa, millions of years ago, pulsed with a rhythm of life unlike any other. Amidst vast woodlands and burgeoning grasslands, a new lineage emerged, the Australopithecines, their very existence a pioneering step in the story of humanity, a testament to ancient ingenuity and resilience, a pivotal chapter in our shared ancestry. They walked upright, yet still clung to the trees, navigating a world brimming with both bounty and peril. Their existence was a delicate balance, shaped by evolving landscapes, cunning predators, and the constant search for sustenance. They were pioneers of bipedalism, forging a path that would one day lead to us. This was a life defined by adaptation, a relentless struggle for survival against the immense forces of nature. Watch until the end and you'll uncover what daily survival truly demanded from early humans, long before civilization even had a name. Watch to the end and you will find out what the daily survival of ancient people really required. And why, despite all this, did Australopithecines sink into oblivion? Beyond the direct dangerous pursuit of live prey, a significant portion of the Australopithecine diet, particularly during leaner times or in less productive hunting grounds, relied on the sophisticated and highly opportunistic art of scavenging. This was not merely stumbling upon a carcass, it was a strategic high-stakes endeavor that required immense courage, keen observational skills, and a profound understanding of the competitive landscape of the Paleolithic ecosystem. Australopithecines were often secondary scavengers, arriving after larger, more powerful predators like saber-toothed cats or massive hyena packs had made a kill and consumed the prime muscle meat. Their goal was to quickly access the nutrient-rich marrow within the bones, the remaining visceral organs, and any fat deposits left behind. This required precise timing and boldness. They had to arrive swiftly, often hours after the initial kill, to avoid direct confrontation with the primary predators, yet before other scavengers, such as colossal hyenas or even other hominin groups, could claim the prize. They would follow the movements of large carnivores, listen for the telltale sounds of a recent kill, and scan the skies for circling vultures, all indicators of a recent death. Once a carcass was located, the risk was immense. Confrontations with other scavengers were common and often violent, demanding quick decisions and collective action. Their robust jaws and teeth, though not primarily for hunting large animals, were perfectly suited for processing tougher parts of a carcass. While direct evidence of stone tool use for scavenging at this early stage is debated, they certainly possessed the intelligence to utilize natural objects to break open bones. The scavenger's art was a testament to their resourcefulness and adaptability, revealing a complex dietary strategy that extended far beyond the romanticized image of the pure hunter. This method of obtaining sustenance reduced the immediate danger and energy expenditure of a full-scale hunt, offering a vital caloric supplement during periods of scarcity. What's your take on this? Does the idea of our distant ancestors relying heavily on scavenging surprise you? Share your thoughts in the comments. Though known for their pivotal development of bipedalism, Australopithecines did not entirely abandon the trees. Their skeletal structure, particularly their relatively long arms and curved finger bones, indicates they retained significant arboreal adaptations. This wasn't merely a nostalgic holdover from their ape-like ancestors. It was a crucial survival strategy in a landscape teeming with formidable ground predators. While walking upright on the ground offered advantages for covering distances and spotting resources, the trees provided an indispensable refuge. When danger presented itself in the form of a charging leopard or a territorial hyena, the ability to rapidly ascend a tree could mean the difference between life and a brutal end. The trees served as a sanctuary for sleep, especially at night. High in the canopy, tucked amongst sturdy branches, they would have found a degree of safety from nocturnal predators that prowled the savanna floor. This arboreal sleeping strategy minimized risk during their most vulnerable hours, a critical factor for species without the elaborate defensive mechanisms or fire control of later hominins. Beyond safety, trees were also a vital source of food. Fruits, leaves, and perhaps even some insects dwelling within the foliage would have supplemented their diet, particularly during seasons when ground-level resources were scarce. The ability to exploit both terrestrial and arboreal environments gave Australopithecines a significant advantage. allowing them to adapt to changing ecological conditions and access a wider range of resources. It represented a dual existence, a masterful negotiation between the open plains and the protective canopy, a testament to their adaptive versatility. But what happens when the very woodlands they depended on for refuge began to shrink, forcing them to spend more time exposed on the unforgiving ground? For Australopithecines, the water's edge was a paradoxical zone of both vital sustenance and immense danger. Access to fresh water was non-negotiable for survival, drawing them to rivers, lakes, and seasonal waterholes. These locations, however, were also prime hunting grounds for the most formidable predators of their era. Crocodiles, enormous and ancient, lurked in the shallows, their patience limitless, waiting for an unwary moment. Large carnivorous mammals, such as the powerful saber-toothed cats and colossal hyenas, often frequented these same water sources, their presence a constant threat. Despite the perils, the water's edge offered unique resources. Beyond mere hydration, it was a place where specific plant foods thrived, often rich in nutrients and less dependent on seasonal rainfalls. Water sources also concentrated prey animals, making them potential hunting or scavenging sites. Australopithecines might have sought out specific stretches of river, where the current was slower, or where rocky outcrops provided elevated vantage points to spot threats. The act of drinking would have been a communal, wary affair, with some individuals standing guard while others quenched their thirst, their senses acutely tuned to any disturbance in the stillness of the air or the rustle of nearby vegetation. The remains of Australopithecines are often found in close proximity to ancient water features, a stark reminder of this daily gamble. Some fossil evidence even suggests that individuals met their end near these vital watering holes, victims of predators lurking beneath the surface or ambushing from the dense riverside vegetation. The constant negotiation of this dangerous lifeline fundamentally shaped their daily movements, their vigilance, and their collective survival strategies, highlighting a world where every necessity came with an inherent risk. The life of an Australopithecine group was not static. It was a perpetual, seasonal movement, a rhythm dictated by the availability of resources and the shifting climate of ancient Africa. Their very existence was a constant journey, a calendar written in the waxing and waning of the sun and the subtle changes in the landscape. When the vital plant foods they relied upon ripened in different areas, or when the sparse waterholes dried up, so too did the Australopithecines shift their foraging grounds. Their movements were not random wanderings, but often followed ancient, intuitive routes that connected crucial resources, patches of fruit trees, sources of potable water, and potentially areas where stone for simple tools could be found. The landscape itself became a complex, unwritten map, with specific trees, rock formations, and seasonal streams etched into their collective memory. During the wetter seasons, the groups would range more widely, exploiting the abundance of plant resources that emerged from the nourished earth. Various fruits, fibrous leaves, roots, and sometimes the sweet nectar of certain flowers. This was a time of relative plenty, allowing them to replenish their strength and perhaps, if the opportunity arose, to venture into new territories. As the dry season intensified, signaling leaner times, the focus shifted dramatically. The group would begin its deliberate return to more resilient water sources, permanent river systems, or previously identified groves of hardy, drought-resistant trees. They knew which specific locations offered consistent resources, which ancient game trails might lead to a carcass, and which sheltered spots provided respite from the intense sun. This deep, empirical knowledge of their territory, accumulated over countless generations, was their most vital survival tool, more valuable than any individual physical attribute. Their lives were a continuous adaptation to the planet's pulse, a testament to their profound connection to the natural world and their remarkable capacity for seasonal movement in response to environmental shifts. The toolkit of the Australopithecines, if it can even be formally called one, was largely based on the opportunistic use of natural objects rather than extensively manufactured implements. Unlike later hominins, there is limited direct evidence of widespread, systematic stone tool production within Australopithecine species, though some tantalizing finds suggest nascent abilities. Their primary tools were their own powerful hands capable of stripping bark, cracking open nuts, and tearing at tough plant fibers. They likely employed unmodified stones for pounding hard-shelled fruits, crushing tough roots, or perhaps even breaking open bones left by carnivores to access nutrient-rich marrow. A sharp-edged rock found purely by chance might have served as a temporary cutting implement for preparing plant matter, or, rarely, processing a small animal. The use of wood and branches would have been equally fundamental. Simple sticks might have been used for digging up tubers, dislodging insects from crevices, or as rudimentary clubs for defense against smaller threats. The precise manipulation required for sustained tool-making or for hafting a stone onto a wooden shaft was likely beyond their cognitive and manual dexterity capabilities. Their survival hinged on their immediate environment providing what was needed rather than their ability to significantly alter it through technology. The absence of complex tool industries meant their dietary range was limited by what could be processed with raw strength and opportunistic finds. Every crack of a nut, every pulled root, every torn piece of bark was a direct interaction with their world, a testament to a hand-to-mouth existence where raw nature provided both the challenge and the solution. This direct engagement with their environment, without the buffering layer of advanced technology, shaped their daily struggles and evolutionary path. For Australopithecines, life was lived under the pervasive shadow of predation. They were not apex predators, but rather a significant component of the vast African food web, often finding themselves at the lower end of the chain. Enormous, powerful carnivores like saber-toothed cats, such as Meganteron and Dinophilis, colossal hyenas like Pachyrhinacuta, and massive crocodiles were constant, lethal threats. These were not merely abstract dangers. Their presence shaped every decision, every movement, and every hour of an Australopithecine's day. Locating safe sleeping sites, choosing foraging paths, and reacting instantaneously to environmental cues were all governed by the ever-present risk of ambush. Fossil evidence tragically illustrates this reality. Some Australopithecine remains bear the telltale marks of carnivore activity. Puncture marks from large canines, gnaw marks on bones, and even the unique fracturing patterns indicative of leopard kills. It's believed that large cats, particularly leopards, would sometimes drag their prey, including hominins, up into trees to avoid kleptoparasitism from other ground-dwelling predators, leaving their remains in precarious, elevated positions that later fossilized. This underscores their vulnerability and the specific strategies predators employed. The fear of being hunted would have been an ingrained, primal instinct. Vigilance was perpetual. One could never truly relax. Every rustle in the tall grass, every shadow, every distant roar could signal an impending attack. Their robust build, while offering some defense, was not enough against the sheer power and cunning of these ancient beasts. This relentless pressure of predation was a significant selective force, shaping their physical adaptations, their social structures, and their keen senses of awareness. The Australopithecine diet was a mosaic of opportunistic foraging, driven by seasonal availability and the specific local environment, reflecting a nuanced blend of their ape-like ancestry and their burgeoning bipedal adaptations. Unlike the later Homo species, who would become highly specialized hunters, Australopithecines were not primarily meat eaters, yet their dietary breadth surpassed that of many modern great apes. This flexibility allowed them to survive in diverse habitats across vast stretches of ancient Africa. Detailed analyses of dental microwear, microscopic scratches and pits on the enamel, and isotopic analyses of fossilized teeth from various Australopithecine species strongly suggest a primary reliance on plant-based foods. This reliance, however, varied significantly depending on the geographical region and prevailing ecological conditions. In more wooded areas, where resources were abundant and consistent, they likely consumed substantial amounts of fruits, tender leaves, and succulent shoots, much like the dietary patterns observed in modern chimpanzees. Their relatively robust jaws and thick enamel, a defining feature of many Australopithecine species, were not merely for aesthetics. They provided the necessary biomechanical advantage to process harder, tougher plant materials. During the prolonged dry seasons, when more palatable and succulent fruits became scarce, these robust dental features proved invaluable. Australopithecines would have turned to more resilient, less digestible fallback foods. These included tough roots, starchy tubers, various types of nuts, and hard seeds, all of which required considerable mastication and grinding to extract nutrients. These grinders were absolutely critical for survival during periods of scarcity, providing essential calories and nutrients when preferred food sources were unavailable. While not regular hunters of large game in a coordinated manner, they almost certainly consumed scavenged meat from carcasses left behind by formidable predators. Their opportunistic nature also extended to catching smaller, slower-moving creatures that presented themselves as easy targets, such as lizards, bird eggs, or even insects and grubs, providing valuable protein and fat. The presence of cut marks on some ancient animal bones, found in context coinciding with Australopithecine presence, hints at an early sporadic use of sharp stones, perhaps naturally occurring flakes or rudimentary modified rocks, to access nutrient-rich marrow or residual flesh. However, the precise origin of these marks remains a subject of considerable scientific debate. This broad dietary flexibility, which was undoubtedly a strength during periods of stable environmental conditions, gradually transformed into a weakness. As the climate continued its long-term trend, favoring the expansion of open grasslands over their preferred denser woodlands, their reliance on a specialized, robust, plant-based diet became increasingly difficult to sustain. The very food sources they were optimally designed to consume were becoming less prevalent, forcing them to compete in a new dietary landscape. Australopithecines, unlike later, more advanced hominins, did not construct elaborate or permanent shelters. Their dwelling strategies were instead dictated by opportunity and immediate necessity, a direct reflection of their semi-nomadic lifestyle and their inherent vulnerability in a dangerous world. Their primary shelters were the trees themselves, as previously discussed. These elevated refuges provided indispensable safety for sleep, particularly during the dangerous nocturnal hours, and offered a swift escape from the numerous ground predators that stalked the ancient landscape. The dense canopy, especially in forested or gallery forest environments along rivers, provided effective protection from the intense, scorching sun and sudden torrential downpours. Within these arboreal havens, they would have likely constructed simple nests or platforms from branches and leaves, much like modern great apes, to rest securely above the ground, minimizing the risk of attack. On the ground, particularly in the increasingly open savanna environments they were forced to inhabit, their camps would have been rudimentary and entirely temporary. These makeshift sites might have involved simply gathering under natural rock overhangs or within shallow depressions in the terrain that offered some inherent protection from prevailing winds or sudden rain. Evidence suggests they might have haphazardly arranged piles of stones or branches to create rough windbreaks, or perhaps to define a communal sleeping area where the group could huddle together for warmth and collective security. Crucially, there is no archaeological evidence of permanent structures, such as built walls, or even systematically constructed hearths for controlled fire, as seen with later hominins. Their survival depended entirely on their ability to move quickly and adapt to whatever natural features the environment presented. This fundamental lack of advanced constructed shelter, and perhaps most significantly, their inability to control fire, left them at a profound disadvantage. As the climate of Africa became more variable, experiencing more pronounced seasons and, in some periods, a noticeable cooling trend, these limitations became critical. Without the warmth and protection of fire or the structural integrity of built shelters, surviving colder nights or prolonged periods of inclement weather would have placed immense physiological stress on their bodies, making them more susceptible to illness and exposure. This inherent technological deficit directly impacted their ability to expand into colder, more resource-scarce regions. The story of the Australopithecines, despite their remarkable tenure spanning millions of years, is a narrative that ultimately culminates in extinction. It was a slow and inevitable conclusion to a highly successful, yet ultimately limited, evolutionary path. The very adaptations that allowed them to thrive for such an extensive period in a specific environmental context ultimately became their undoing in a world that was undergoing profound and relentless change. Their reliance on both terrestrial and arboreal environments left them increasingly vulnerable. As the once extensive forests and dense woodlands, which provided essential refuge, food, and safety from predators, began to recede due to intensifying climatic shifts, they gave way to an ever-expanding, open, and far more unforgiving savanna landscape. This ecological transformation directly eroded their habitat and resource base. Furthermore, their distinct physical characteristics, once advantageous, became less so. Their powerful jaws and robust teeth, perfectly suited for the mastication of tough, fibrous plant foods abundant in their ancestral habitats, became an overspecialization. This made them less efficient as the dietary pressures shifted, and a more varied, calorie-dense, and often protein-rich diet became increasingly necessary for survival in the changing, drier environments. Crucially, their decline was compounded by the emergence of new competitors. The appearance of the genus Homo, with its progressively larger brain, increasingly complex tool-making abilities, evidenced by the Oldowan stone tools, and a developing mastery of new technologies like controlled fire and more sophisticated cooperative hunting techniques, created a formidable evolutionary challenge that the Australopithecines were simply not equipped to handle. These new hominins possessed a superior capacity to process a wider range of foods, actively control and modify their immediate environment, and defend themselves far more effectively against the formidable predators of the time. The Australopithecines story is therefore not a tragedy of sudden, catastrophic disaster, but rather a quiet, gradual fade-out. Their highly specialized evolutionary path, once a masterful solution to the ecological challenges of a particular ancient world, became a distinct disadvantage in the face of a rapidly transforming climate and the emergence of new, more adaptable, and ultimately dominant forms of hominin life. This led to their final and complete disappearance from the fossil record approximately 2 million years ago. Their profound legacy, however, persists not in their continued existence, but in the crucial evolutionary path they forged for a new, more adaptable lineage that would, in time, become us, inheriting their bipedal stride and the foundational lessons of survival. The story of the Australopithecines is a testament to resilience, a journey through a world both abundant and brutal. Their evolution of bipedalism, their versatile foraging strategies, and their deep reliance on social bonds allowed them to persist for millions of years, navigating a dynamic landscape of expanding grasslands and shrinking forests. They were not merely primitive beings. They were innovators of movement and adaptation, facing existential threats daily. Their ultimate decline and eventual disappearance from the fossil record, roughly around 2 million years ago, are thought to be linked to intensifying climate shifts that favored more adaptable hominins with larger brains and more sophisticated tool-making abilities, eventually leading to the rise of our own genus, Homo. Their legacy, however, lives on in our upright stance and our fundamental capacity for collective survival. What aspect of Australopithecine life do you find most fascinating or challenging to imagine? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into the origins of humanity.